Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Williamson County Sports Connection. I'm Jack Daniels, your host, and with me for my guest today is the head volleyball coach at Centennial High School, Coach Brittany Rhinehart. Coach, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, well, let's start with you, Brittany, and just kind of start with where you grew up and where you went to school and what you've been doing over the last ever so many years.
Oh, all right. Well, I'm originally from Huntsville, Alabama, so I grew up just around the sport of volleyball. My mom has been a coach for as long as I can remember, and my older sister played, and she played in college, so kind of little kid always wanted to emulate your sister, kind of wanted to do everything she wanted to. So I got started at a really young age and played competitively and really got into the travel program as a young player. And then in '99, we moved here for my dad's job, and I attended Centennial for 3 years, so my sophomore, junior, and senior year. And we actually made it to the state tournament at Centennial my junior and senior year. So that kind of has instilled in me really just the competitive nature of volleyball. And I attended the University of Tennessee. I could have probably played volleyball somewhere. I got offered a couple scholarships, but I felt at that time that my calling was somewhere else. And so I went to Tennessee in Knoxville. But my mom took over as coach of Centennial after that. So it kind of all stayed in the family a little bit. So she coached for about 9 years, and I became a volunteer coach for her in 2007, and then took over as her full-time assistant in '08, and then became head coach 2009, 2010, when we kind of had a death in the family, and she felt that she wanted somebody to take over the reins who was a little bit more passionate about it, and she just felt it was her time to kind of give it to somebody else. And so I will be starting my 5th year as a head coach there this fall.
Okay, well, what do you teach at Centennial?
I teach biology, so I do a couple standard classes and a few honors classes this year.
Okay, do you teach that AP too?
No, I leave that to somebody else. Just with the volleyball, because I'm in the gym probably 6 or 7 hours after. AP would also be very time consuming, and I would want those kids to really get the benefit of a teacher who could focus on AP as much as anything else. So.
Now you said you started out in Huntsville?
Yes, sir.
What school did you go to in Huntsville?
I went to Grissom my freshman year, so they have been known to be a volleyball powerhouse in the state of Alabama, and that's actually where my sister played. So I played there for 1 year and then moved here.
A lot of our teams kind of go to Huntsville for volleyball tournaments, don't you? You take your team down?
I do. We go every year, and we actually won it last year. We beat another team in the district in the final, so we had a really good representation from this county down there. And the reason we travel is just because sometimes you get tired of playing the same people in the same area, and it's good competition from Alabama and from Georgia. So a lot of the teams that end up in the state tournament in those respective states, as well as competing for a state championship. So it's very good practice for playing the teams in our district, because our district is one of the best, if not the best in the state in terms of volleyball.
Okay. Well, let's kind of recap last year.
Yes,
let's just go back to last year's team and tell us all about last season.
Last season actually was one of the best that we've had in the last couple of years. We ended up being 34-10. So we started out really strong against some non-district opponents. So we usually play the private schools to get a little bit more competition. And actually one of our losses, only one of them, was to any team outside of our districts. So the other 9 were from teams right here that we compete against every day. The team is really strong. We have a lot of talented skill players because we have a lot of players that play club, so they're used to playing year-round volleyball. So I do have a little bit of a blessing with that because I have girls that have played for a few years, so we can work on a lot of the higher level volleyball, not necessarily the fundamental skills that you always have to teach. And we had 5 seniors last year. 2 of them are actually playing volleyball this fall at colleges.
Oh, okay.
So it is a little bit of a loss losing those kind of leaders in terms of they know what it takes to play at the next level. But they really left a really good mark and a really good competitive drive for this team coming up in terms of what they want to accomplish this year. So
I've kind of noticed in our county that we have, I don't know if it's a specialization in what you want to call it, but in volleyball, the girls don't usually play 2 sports.
And see, that's frustrating to me because I played volleyball and basketball in high school. And I think when you can play another sport, you can stay in shape and you kind of get to work out a different part of your body and you get more conditioned and things like that. And you don't get as burnt out. When you're playing volleyball all year and not really changing it up to what you play, that to me made me want to play volleyball that much more when I wasn't playing it every day. But that is one of the things that I think has been a little bit of a detriment to some of the volleyball players in terms of some of the skills that they would develop playing other sports. So I always encourage my girls to do something else. And we have a couple of girls that play softball. We have a couple of girls that run track. But for the most part, a lot of them just stick to volleyball because the travel season is very time consuming. They practice 2 to 3 times a week, and a lot of our girls take AP classes and higher level classes. So it's really hard to find that balance between doing that, doing travel volleyball, and doing another sport. So
travel picks up immediately after the state tournament, basically, for those girls?
They have tryouts towards, I think, the middle or beginning to middle of November, and then a lot of the higher level teams start practicing in December. So it can go anywhere from December all the way through July if they go to nationals. So it's a long season, and when we pick up preseason in July and do those open gyms, you know, some of those girls don't ever get a break.
Sure.
So
Let's talk about assistant coaches. You got who you got helping you?
I do. This year, I actually lost my JV coach last year. She moved to Cookeville to take on another job there, so and to be closer to her family. So this year, I hired a girl she's from Kentucky. She played at St. Catherine's College, and she is non-faculty, so she's has another daytime job, but she's played in college, and she's originally from California, so she brings a little bit of knowing what it's going to take to play at that next level and knowing kind of the process and recruiting and stuff like that that I wouldn't necessarily have a good background in. So it's going to be another tool for my girls to utilize as a way if they want to play at the next level. But she's new to the county, so it's just good to have a different dynamic. Somebody who's not familiar with the teams around here that can kind of get a breath of fresh air and bring like a new positive attitude to our team. And then my freshman coach is actually Sarah Doom, and she played at Independence here in high school. So it's also nice to have somebody who is familiar with the district as well and knows kind of how competitive we've been. And I think she's very good fundamentally at getting those freshman level girls up to where they could potentially benefit our JV and our varsity teams on the next level.
Now, do you, the district's changed a little bit. Would you tell everybody what district you're in and who's the teams that are in your district?
We are in District 11 AAA, and we lost Hillsborough this year. They left, and now they're going to compete against a lot of the metro teams around there. And we have added Dixon County and Summit. So I think Summit came up a division because of enrollment, and then we're pulling in Dixon County. So it will be a little bit of a change because it'll go from 6 to 7. So kind of the way we've had to figure out when we're playing and scheduling and things like that. But it definitely brings new kind of rivalries in it because some of these kids, they have played club with them and they are familiar with them. So I think it's going to be a great experience to have them and welcome them into the district.
Now, did you play Summit last year?
We did not. We didn't play him at all, but I'm good friends with Warren Riker, their head coach.
Right.
So I'm always asking them how they're doing and just kind of trying to make them feel welcome to the district and just kind of give them a heads up.
Do you know anything about Dixon County?
I don't know a whole lot about Dixon County. I do know, I saw them a couple of times last year at some tournaments and things like that, but I do know that they have had a strong program where they, in the district that they were in before. So any new competition we always welcome, and I'm excited to see where the district can go this year.
Well, you mentioned earlier about District 11 AAA being probably the strongest in the state.
Yes, sir.
So who are some of these teams in which you're going to have to beat out this year for a district championship?
Well, obviously it'll be Brentwood and Ravenwood will be two of the top ones. They played in the state finals last year, and they don't lose very much off their teams. So that's usually who, when we were practicing and things like that, we focus on that. We're focusing on what are the techniques we need to do as a team to be successful to get over that hump. We did beat Ravenwood last year in the Huntsville tournament. So that was really good for our team to see that we could beat them and that they do have the skills. It's just sometimes my team struggles with complacency and playing with that high level every single time out of the gate and to not get intimidated by some of the teams that they play against because they play with them in club and, sometimes you tend to get a little nervous when you're playing against your friends and things like that. So that's one of our goals is just no matter what team we're playing, no matter where we're playing them, when we're playing them, to play the same way every single time. And Independence is always strong. One of my good friends coaches Independence, so it's always fun to compete against them because they always put a strong team out there. Franklin always has a strong team, and with Summit and Dixon County coming in, it's just really good to see some of these younger teams because Summit's pretty new, and
They are.
they're starting to build their program up a lot. So I'm excited to see where they're going to keep growing too.
Right.
So
Now, the Ravenwood-Brentwood game, I got to see them play in the state tournament last year. I remember Ravenwood had a pretty good-sized tall girl
Yes.
that played in there.
Yes.
Is she back?
she is. She's a senior this year. So
And didn't her sister get a scholarship at Texas?
yes, her sister is going to Texas, and then I believe Kat's going to play at Alabama next year. And my libero, Reagan Petty, is also going to go with her to Alabama to play.
Oh, okay.
And so they're really good friends outside of Centennial Ravenwood because they play on a club together. So it's just fun to kind of see their friendships outside and then kind of see their competitiveness when they play.
Okay.
So.
Well, let's talk about this year's team. Just
Yes,
tell
sir.
us who your players are, how many seniors you have, if you have captains already. Just tell us
Yes.
all about your team.
I've got 4 seniors this year, and they are actually a really good group of leaders this year. My 2 captains are Sarah No and Reagan Petty. And my team always votes on captains. I kind of tell them what my ideas of captains are, and they kind of vote because I feel like when they take ownership of who their captains are, they can really respect them. And Sarah does a phenomenal job of leading on the court. She has control of the court, and she's kind of my extension out there because if I say I want something done, she takes it and runs with it. Reagan is a phenomenal example of a leader. She will leave 110% effort out on the court. I never have to worry that she's not giving me everything she has. So she is pretty much my defensive leader, and when a younger girl is struggling or not putting in the effort, I tell them to watch Reagan and watch Sarah because they are the kind of players that I want my younger players to emulate and admire. And then a third senior I have is Maddie Earp. She's one of my starting outsides. She has been on varsity since she was a freshman. She is one of the most consistent outside hitters that I've ever had the privilege to coach. Maddie's just going to go out there and play her hardest all the time. Maddie might not be the most outgoing leader, but she leads in the way she plays. And then my other senior is Edwarda Loggy, and Edwarda hasn't had as much fundamental skills as some of the other girls, but she's really stepped up this preseason and is really going to fight for a starting role. And it's really been fun to watch her grow because she has had some injuries in the past, and when it comes to volleyball, knees kind of important, but she's had some knee problems, but she's really matured in terms of her volleyball, and I really look forward to seeing how she can contribute. I have some younger girls stepping in. My 2 medals graduated this past year, so that's one of the positions that I was really worried about who was going to fill in that position, really step up to that role. And I have right now 3 girls that are really competing for it, and they are very much the same player. Like they're all a little bit shorter, but they can all jump, and they're all fighters and competitors. So it's going to be fun to watch them battle it out to see who gets to play.
Now, you said something that kind of, I'm not real good on some of the terminology of
Yes, sir.
volleyball. You said outside hitter.
Yes. So on the left side of the net.
Explain
Yes, sir.
what an outside hitter is.
An outside hitter will usually play on the left side of the net or left back. Most good outside hitters are your most athletic players, and they'll usually play all the way around, but they'll be the ones swinging on the left side of the net. And then your middle hitters will be in the middle, and then your right sides or your opposites will be on the right side of the net if you're looking at the net.
Okay, but what if I'm left-handed?
If you're left-handed,
Would I not be
it's
an
kind of
outside hitter to the right side of the net then?
What I would usually do if I had a left-handed hitter is put them on the right side because they have a little bit more areas to hit and they can control the ball a little bit more on that side. But some coaches do put them on the outside, and I had a left-handed middle last year because she could jump and block. So it kind of depends on your team and your players and where they can contribute the most.
Right. I haven't noticed very many left-handed volleyball players. I mean, every time I'm watching, it's always a right-handed person who's serving and all that kind of stuff. Back when I played volleyball, the old church league volleyball, we used to take and serve the ball underhanded like this right here.
Yep.
But nobody does that.
They don't do it very much anymore. I just think they're teaching kids at a younger age to serve overhand because it's a lot more powerful. You can control it a lot more. And there's so many different ways you can serve. You can do a top spin serve, you can float serve. A lot of players are jump serving now to get a little bit more power. So, the underhand serve kind of going out of the way a little bit. So, because I know a lot of 12 and 13s now, they're teaching them to overhand serve.
When I was in PE in the gym, we used to put up the volleyball nets
Yes,
and
sir.
play a little volleyball. And I did the serve that I called the American twist. So I was probably the spin server,
Yep.
which you were talking about. But sometimes it would get in, sometimes it hit the bleachers on the other side, that kind of thing. But you talk about some of the positions of the court. 6 girls are playing, right?
Yes, sir.
And if there's a rule that you could change in volleyball to make the game more exciting, what would that rule be? Because I've got one in my mind right here.
Well, what's the one you have? Let's see if it's the one I
I would
have.
like to see it be like hockey, where the players are just running in and out continuously, and there's no stoppage in the game.
There's
just
no
like hockey
stopping.
did. And so, man, you could just run like 3 players in and 3 players out, and the ball's in play. Don't you think that would make the game more exciting?
It probably would make it a little more exciting, but see, we're limited to 3 hits.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be a little bit difficult probably because we only have 2 officials for them to keep track of who hit the ball and who didn't hit the ball and double hits and things like that. But we do have a position that kind of does that. We have a libero now. She's always the girl in the different color jersey, if you've ever been to a volleyball game.
Yes.
And so they don't count as a substitution. So they can kind of sub in and out freely, but they can only serve for one position.
Mm-hmm.
So
Let's talk about substitution then.
Yes, sir.
How's it go? I mean, how's it work? Because I get confused about that all the time.
Well, there's a maximum number of 18 that you can have in a varsity
Okay.
volleyball game.
18.
Mm-hmm. And so anytime a coach calls for a sub, the player goes up to the baseline or the sideline. Referee whistles them in. The other girl goes in. It's pretty quick.
Do you have to sub for the same person each time? I mean, how
If
can
let's
you put
say
them in different
if
people?
number 12 goes in for number 6, number 6 can either go back in for her or you can put somebody else back in. But number 6 could not go in for anybody else. They have to go to the same position that they started in.
Let's do away with that rule. Let's let them go with it.
Maybe. We'll see.
I'm trying to get it less confusing because I never could keep up with substitutions when I was watching a volleyball
I know.
match.
I'm not sure TWSAA or USA Volleyball would probably like that rule very much, but
What do you think? This is kind of off the subject, girls, but do you think boys volleyball will ever hit Tennessee?
well, they do have some club teams. I know Alliance has a couple of male volleyball teams. I know I've had several kids at school ask me if we could start a boys club team, and actually, the Summit coach Warren and I had talked about it a little bit last year to try and figure it out. It's pretty difficult to get a club sport started, but that is something that we're going to look at maybe starting in the spring or something, just kind of maybe a couple of high schools playing against each other, see if we can do that. But I would like to see it get a little bit bigger because Tennessee just has a wide receiver or a tight end that played volleyball at Pepperdine.
Sure.
And so that's kind of neat to see that, you don't necessarily have to play football or basketball to be good at that sport. But I would like to see the boys sport grow in Tennessee. It's just kind of a little bit slower moving.
Do you know what states do have boys volleyball? I'm sure California is probably
Absolutely.
is one.
California for sure has it. More of the West Coast states have it. I think maybe Colorado has it, but I may be mistaken. And it is a little more popular up north because there are some boys that played for the club team at Alliance and actually have scholarships or walked on at schools this past year or two. So I do know it's starting to grow a little bit, but I think the South still is a little bit more concentrated on girls volleyball.
So in the colleges, we don't have boys volleyball down in the South.
Not very much. I think maybe
It would
some
be
of
a
the smaller
club
schools.
type thing
Yes,
if
sir.
it was. So competitive would be more up north or out west.
Yeah, Midwest.
In the
out west,
Midwest,
yep.
like the Pepperdine you
Yep.
were speaking of.
And I think they have some up north as well, like in New York and Rhode Island and some of those smaller schools up there, maybe Ivy League schools. But
Well,
just hasn't quite made it this way yet.
Are there trick plays in volleyball?
Absolutely.
So
But I can't
kinda-
tell you any of
No,
them.
just describe one for me, Coach. I
I
mean,
can't tell you any of those.
well, what would be a trick play? I mean, hiding a guy on the sideline and run them in? I mean, you can't do that. You can't do that.
Just maybe like some of the sets that you would have, like if my setter might call one of my outside hitters to run one play and somebody else run a play close to them or something, and depending on where she sets, trying to hold the blocker on the other side. So if you have a bigger blocker, trying to get a one-on-one situation instead of getting 2 blockers up. So stuff like that, or you might run 2 or 3 in the middle and not
Okay,
sure
that's
which one
gonna-
she would set. So
yeah.
you might have one run here and one run right behind her, and then you set the back row player right behind her. So that might be like a trick play you would run.
Okay. Because I see prior to the serve, girls kind of bunch up sometimes in certain little areas.
Yep.
And that is to disguise on which one's going to go to which area.
Well, no,
or
they
do
have
you have
like
a certain
you have
area
a
you got
base
to go
position,
to?
and then you have like a position that you play on the court. So
Okay.
like when you rotate, that's your position on the court, but your base might be on the left side. So if my position is middle front, but my base is left front, I would have to run around that person who's actually in position left front. So you're not out of rotation.
Okay.
Because then it would be like a loss of serve.
Okay, but prior to the serve, I got to be in my area.
In your position on the court that you rotated to.
And then after the ball's in
After the
play,
ball's served,
I
you
can
go
move.
to your base.
Can I go front to back, to the back line, to the front line?
To play a ball, yes, but if you're on the front row, you pretty much have to stay on front row. If you're on back row, you can't.
Can you spike? Could you come to the front and spike if I'm on back row?
Back row players, you have a 10-foot line, which is that line kind of in the middle of the volleyball court, if you've ever been. And back row players just can't jump in front of that line before they attack the ball.
Well, okay, you
So they
have to
could jump
explain
and
that
swing,
one now. Okay.
and then as long they can land in front of it, they just can't. When they take off for the attack, they can't land in
Okay,
front.
so what if they were in front of it? They could still hit the ball, they just
But they
couldn't
have
jump.
to stay below the net.
They got to stay below the net, so they couldn't go up the net and spike it.
And then the libero, who's back row, she can't even if she jumps in the back row, she can't be above the plane of the net.
All right, explain this to me, because I see this happen all the time. Ball's coming over, girl goes up to spike it. You blockers block it. It hits their hands, goes over and hits that girl's backhand. It's back in play. How many times can you hit it now? I mean,
well, each side gets 3 hits.
Does that count as a hit?
But a block doesn't necessarily count as a hit.
It does not count
No,
as a hit.
it does not count as a hit. If they're blocking it and then you go up and hit it, that's legal.
Okay. So if I go up to block it and the ball stays on my side, then my team still has
a set and a hit. You can
okay,
still have
still got 3 hits to get it back
sir.
over. And the officials are there to keep up with that as far as
that's their job to keep up with it.
What goes through on that.
Yeah.
Well, I noticed that it takes more than one to do a game. So who do you get to help call like the lines and stuff at your games?
For varsity games now, it has to be adult line judges.
Oh, okay.
Usually the home team provides both, but sometimes I'll ask the away team, would you like to provide an adult line judge? But usually we provide both. And then for scheduling, we submit to Jeff Grissom and he does it through the arbiter. So he'll assign referees for our games. But we always have to have 2 now.
Okay. So I guess when it gets to tournament play, they have officials
Yes, sir.
who officially do it type
Yes,
thing
sir.
as far as the line plays go. Because I remember,
Districts and regionals and sub-state and state tournament is all officials after that. But up until then, you have the adult line judges.
Now, do you play a full JV schedule, freshman schedule?
Yes, sir.
Do you have freshman volleyball?
I do, sir. Yep, and we do, because Ravenwood's the only other team in our district with the freshman team, we do a league with like St. Cecilia, Father Ryan, let me see who else is in that. White House Heritage is in there as well, and a couple other teams that are based out of Nashville. And Ensworth is one of those teams, so we do a freshman schedule with them, just to get them some more competitiveness with girls their age, but I do play them up in JV tournaments to get a little bit more competition.
Why is that none of the other schools have freshmen? Is it just facilities don't have enough space?
I don't know if
play?
it's facilities or I know we got a lot of help when we rezoned the schools a couple years ago, so we got a lot more kids. We pulled some kids out of Woodland and we got a little bit more out of Page, so we just have had a lot more girls playing volleyball.
Okay.
There's been a bigger interest and a bigger push at the middle schools for kids to play volleyball. So,
would you consider yourself, Brittany, a defensive or an offensive-minded type coach?
Usually more defense because I feel like defense wins you championships.
Okay.
And defense wins you games because you can't run an offense without a good defense. But I have played everywhere in middle school or in high school. In the state championship, I had to play middle against Lauren Brewster, who was 6'4", who went to Notre Dame on a volleyball scholarship. So, but then in club ball, I also played defense. So, I feel like a good player should be able to play both. But a defensive-minded player makes a great offensive player versus a great offensive player having to work backwards. But I feel if you get the defense right first and have a defensive-minded game and a defensive-minded team, then the offense is going to come with that.
Kind of give us an idea about what a practice would look like for you. About how long you're going to be practicing, what do you start with, what kind of, how do you go through a practice?
Well, usually my practices, once school starts, are about 2 hours. I feel like 2 hours is the max time that I'm going to get the amount of effort that I need out of the girls.
Right.
And usually we'll start with some ball handling, just ball control, things like that, just passing, setting to each other, things like that, just kind of to get their feet moving. And usually I'll do some form of conditioning, just because agility is really key in volleyball, and I feel like our team is really quick this year, and that's been one of the things that's really helped our team. And then usually we'll work on some kind of team offense or team defense for about an hour, just something that I've noticed in a practice before, or if we're struggling on blocking, or if my middles are struggling on transitioning quick enough to get back to the net to hit. We'll usually work on that, and then we might scrimmage JV at the end of a practice, or I have 12 girls on my varsity, so I might mix and match the girls and just kind of have them all play against each other and things like that. So.
Does every team, and this is just the ones I've kind of seen, after a point is made, they all always come back to the middle and high five, or they're saying they got a little chant that they say.
I mean, it's kind of up to the team and the coach. I like to see that because it's kind of like, hey, we're refocusing, play's over, let's go, we got the next ball.
Okay.
But I mean, you have those players who get mad at themselves if they make an error and kind of forget to go to the huddle, or they're just kind of push themselves off, and that's part of the team knowing, okay, we're good, let's come together, she's fine, we got it. Just kind of understanding your players and understanding what works best for your team. If they're going to get the next point and they don't necessarily have to do that, then that may work for your team. But I just think it looks more, just looks more like dynamic to have those teams come together. And sometimes it's a little intimidating if the other team's not upset about something. They're like, we got this next ball, we're good, let's go. So that's just something I try to kind of instill in my girls, is to still be a team on the court no matter what happens.
Coach, do you have a booster club or fundraisers going or anything like that?
We do. We have a booster club through the school, but we do fundraise a lot of money, because sometimes we may need a new uniform, or because we're on uniform rotations at school, or we need a new net system this year. So we actually have just finished a fundraiser selling cookie dough, of course. Well, yeah. We've sold it for about 4 years. I know the girls are probably so tired of cookie dough, but we do raise a lot of money for that. It does go right back to our program and things that can help the girls directly, like volleyballs and nets. So it's fun. We're always doing something. So.
Well, Coach, thank you for coming on and being part of the show, and best of luck this year. This show is airing right before the season officially starts, so I hope you stay healthy. I hope you make it to the state tournament this year and represent Williamson County in a very positive manner.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us for today's show. I'm Jack Daniels, your host.
Homework. It's either something you love or you hate, right? Well, research shows that a reasonable amount of homework is actually good for your child. It helps them practice the skills they've learned at school and build a sense of responsibility. But how can you keep homework from being a battleground at your house? Try some of these tips. First of all, be sure your child has a quiet place to work, and be sure that place has a good lighting. Make sure there's a regular homework time at your house every day. Even if your child doesn't have homework, that time can be used for reading, studying for upcoming tests, or working on a project. Be sure your child has all the supplies she needs in one place, so that time is not wasted looking for those supplies. Be available for questions. You may even want to go over some sample questions at the beginning, but remember, homework is your child's responsibility. Be sure to encourage her to do the homework independently. Keep track of the time your child spends doing homework. The general rule is 10 minutes per grade level. If your child is consistently unable to do the homework by herself, or spending more than the recommended amount of time, it may be time to talk to your child's teacher and find out how you can help make the most of her homework time. Remember to stay connected. You're a vital link in your child's success. I'm Steve Fisher, and this is the Parent